Okay, so I agreed to make a video with this user here, Phoenix178. I've been playing a few games against. He's a guy from Quora, I think, and yeah, we've been playing some classical games and some blitz games here. I think somehow that game ended up being unrated, but hope he's not too unhappy about that. Okay, so we have a very non-standard move, bishop d7. Never seen that before, I don't think. And how do we approach this? I guess just develop normally. So if I can get these two center pawns nicely posted on e4 and d4, I'm usually happy. So black should somehow try to attack my pawn center. That is one way. I think the knight c6 is a bit strange also, because normally you want to have your c pawn on c5 before you develop your knight on the queen side. This could run into moves like d5, for instance, and I think d5 straight away is a reasonable option. So he's saying that his black openings are not very good. It's definitely an unorthodox choice, to put it like that, but it might work. So do I take, or do I just develop? I think I can take and get like strong center, and I might play c4. The e5 pawn isn't necessarily that bad. I mean, later black could perhaps play moves like g6, maybe even f5 at some point, play c6 and e6, try to break up my pawn center here. But for the moment I think I have a pretty comfortable advantage from the opening. Nothing totally crazy, of course. I don't think this e5 business goes very well in hand with this fianchetto setup. Probably not. So I'm thinking about possibly moves like h4 directly, just going for a quick attack. He might just play h5 then. Another option could be, for instance, bishop e3 or bishop g5 followed by bishop e3, and then queen d2. Sometimes knight g4 could be awkward, but I think it's okay. Bishop g5, h6, something like bishop e3. Now that he goes here, I think queen d2 is definitely strong. I will get this typical attack of with my h pawn and with bishop h6, which is very difficult to counter, especially when I have this bishop on e2, because if his knight ever goes to h5, I can just take it with my bishop. So I think my next move is likely to be bishop h6, because if I go h4 straight away, black could always consider playing h5, even though it's a very weakening move. Sometimes you can actually play h5 just to stop the attack temporarily. That could be an important detail. Okay, so 98, possibly with the intention of playing f5. At least I think that's, or maybe he wants to position his knight on d6 at the moment. that doesn't really work due to c5. But this could be a good moment to actually play bishop h6. F5 is always a double-edged move, let's say. At the moment, I think mostly f5 will just compromise the king position even more. His pieces are very cramped at the moment, so he needs to untangle somehow. And I think the logical way to do that here is to attack my center directly with e6 or c6. And probably not this one. So if I just do nothing here, like, or if I play something like h4, he could consider f4, trying to close things. So I think maybe taking is a better option. My king is perfectly safe here, and I'm likely to castle. I'm more likely to castle queenside than kingside anyway. So, although I mean, with this move, castling queenside is less attractive, but still, I think now I will continue with this standard plan of the h-file attack. And if he plays knight f6, I might play g4 followed by h5. h5 straight away, he might just take it. Or probably h5 immediately is probably very strong as well. Maybe even stronger, since I have this bishop that is pointing at h5. I think this attack makes a lot of sense when black is so cramped and I have this huge space advantage and a good position in the center. Then I can actually allow myself to go on an attack like this. Very often attacks like this on the h-file can be premature, but here with my domination in the center, I think it's totally warranted to do this. So, of course, the typical idea here is to take on h6, then take on g6, and then queen h6. So he tries to actually escape with the king, but it's kind of hard to say exactly where he's gonna escape. For the moment, e8 is blocked by the knight. Maybe I shouldn't actually take on g7. Maybe I should wait until he moves his knight, because then taking would be very strong. So, something else then. Yeah, castle queenside, I think I'll do that, because even though this bishop is pointing towards my king and just cutting off a lot of squares, he's very far from getting any sort of attack against my king, and I think I can take this liberty right now. And like I said, if he moves the knight, I'm immediately gonna just take on g7, take on g6, and then queen h6. And that will usually spell doom for the black king. Perhaps he could consider taking on h6 himself. I'm also thinking about other attacking ideas like just d6 and then knight d5. Okay, so now the knight did leave his post, and I think it's time to play this maneuver, this typical attacking idea. Usually when you do this, or usually when I do this, I'm not totally clear on exactly how I'm going to continue, but I just feel like whenever I'm allowed to do stuff like this, it's going to be yeah, very difficult to defend. So I think it's important that I don't let him escape without having anything concrete. So bishop h5 is the first move that comes to mind. Leaving this pawn on pre on c4, but threatening queen takes h7. Rook h8 would then be a very typical move. And then I'd have to think perhaps c5 then. Rook h3 is another move. Rook d3 even. But let's just play this move first and see what happens. Rook h8 probably needs to be played here because of this very strong threat against h7. I think king e8 now, I just take twice on g6. And even though the king escapes, it will still be stuck in a very bad position on d8, and this cuts off the rook on a8 as well. And whenever the rook on f8 leaves the 8th rank, like let's say taking on f2, then rook h8 will come. So here I think first this one, followed probably by knight e4. Knight e4 to g5 to e6 would be nice. e6 would be like, if this was crazy house and I could just take a knight and drop it wherever I wanted, then e6 would be probably be the very best, or it would be the very best place to drop a knight. So if I can get there in 3 moves, seems pretty good. He might try to exchange queens somehow, like queen f5 right now. But I don't think it helps all that much, because the endgame is also pretty good for me. I have an extra pawn. And the rook on a8 is a big problem for black. So knight c4, possibly with ideas of queen b5. So let's say knight e4, queen b5, attacking b2. But maybe I can just defend with, I think I can just defend with b3 in that case. And also the knight on e4 protects both on c5 and on f2. Definitely a very good square for the knight. And by playing b3 I'm also threatening the knight myself. And it might have to go to a5. I just have to be careful that I don't run into any sacrifices like queen b5, b3, knight a5, and maybe it takes on b3. May or may not work, but I don't know. So let's see. I have to be very careful when I move, go knight g5, because it does leave the c-pawn hanging with check. I don't really see any great sacrifices right now. So yeah, there was 2 moves, either to a3 or a5. And so let's think a little bit about knight g5 here. It looks a bit risky, but it's critical. So knight g5, queen takes c5 check, queen c... he doesn't have queen c2 because my queen actually covers, I just noticed. So he doesn't have any checks there, except on c4. And if I take, then if I take on c4 in that case, then queen b4 check, king a1, queen c3 check, king b1, queen b4 check, king c1, and I might escape because I do have still have the queen, which can come to c2, but that seems awfully dangerous. No, that doesn't work because I'm allowing a rook then to come to this rook to take on f2. That doesn't work. But what about d6 directly? Just trying to open up the lines. He can't really prevent me from opening the line necessarily. Well, he can sort of, but the question is if it's all that favorable for me to do that. Another idea would be just to play c6 and queen e6, going for that mate instead. Doesn't seem too bad actually. Not exactly sure what he plays on that move. Yeah, maybe he wants to take on f2 here. Takes, and take on c5. But I don't really think that works. We'll see. Okay, I have to make a move. So takes on f2, takes queen c5, king b2, queen takes f2 check, there's queen takes a3. I don't think there's any perpetual, so let's say knight c4 check, sacrificing even more material, but then just king a1, king a1, sorry. Probably. It's a bit complicated though. But my next move is probably going to be queen e6, unless something drastic happens. So I think something drastic needs to happen on his part. Otherwise, he'll just be checkmated. And the nice thing about the c6 move instead of knight g5 is I don't allow the rook to capture on f2 and stuff like that. So here we go. And now everything has to happen with check if anything should happen, and I don't really see it, so I think this is just game over. It's literally checkmate. I don't think there's any way to avoid that. That's with the check, so queen g6 next will be checkmate, and rook h8. Yes. So resigned. Pretty decent game. I'm a bit unsure if there were any opportunities there for black. I think if you look at this this opening, this is all very good for me. I don't think this pawn on e5 goes very well in connection with the fianchetto bishop here. So this is all making sense. f5, I think f5 is a bit too drastic. I think black should rather untangle with something like e6 or c6. It's a bit ugly, but if you can do that take once, then maybe put a knight to d6. That should possibly give some hope of survival, unless I'm just mating him on the h-file. But f5 is, although it's very double-edged, I think it's a bit too drastic, like I said. Maybe g4 could have been played, but this was fine. And again, maybe I could take on g7, but I don't think there's anything wrong with the way I played here. And now, apparently g4 was very strong, because if he takes, and takes here, it's a disaster. So yeah, it's a very nice move, g4. But also this is I could have played g4 here as well, but this should be winning as well. King g8 offers more resistance apparently, but still it's very hard to defend after, let's say, king g8 c5. Yeah, he does have knight f7, that's true. But it's still, even if I don't checkmate, it's a very strong position. And here, this was all fine. The interesting moment was actually here. I think if I play knight g5 here, yeah, it's a checkmate in 5 moves, so that doesn't work. d6 was also probably very good, but c6, it's actually a forced mate in 10 according to the computer. So yeah, it was surprisingly hard to defend against this idea here. So okay, good game, Phoenix, and thanks for watching, everyone.